Good afternoon. My name is John Herbst, and I run the Eurasia Center here at the Atlantic Council. We've got a wonderful event for you today. In fact, I should mention this event was an idea of one of our speakers, Professor Andrei Kirilenko, who talked to me about Ukraine's high-tech sector a couple of years ago and said we should do something about it, do an event on it today. We have a wonderful roster of speakers. I will not introduce them. You have their bios here. What I will do is simply make the following point, that there is a thriving high-tech sector in Ukraine. It is connected to the global economy. It largely avoids some of the messiness that characterizes business in Ukraine. And beyond that, there are serious Ukrainian brains in Silicon Valley and in the high-tech world in Europe, the United States, and elsewhere. With that, I'll turn the podium over to Dr. Kirilenko, who will introduce our speaker and then our panel. Andrei.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you very much for coming. It's great to be here. Thank you, John, for organizing this. Thank you all for coming to the event. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Tetyana, who will present the report, and I put together this publication, this little report on Ukraine from legacy to digital. And this report, as John just said, and this came out of several conversations we had, both here in the U.S. and in London, in Europe and Ukraine, about sort of the economic history, economic development, economy of Ukraine. I'm an economist. I'm a financial economist. I run a fintech center at the Imperial College London. Prior to that, I was a professor of finance at MIT, and before that, I was a regulator here in DC and spent a bunch of years at the International Monetary Fund, going around the world fighting financial crisis. And so Ukraine, to me, was sort of always a small, open economy. It was a very shallow financial sector. And if you have a combination like that, you have crisis that you import into the country because prices change. You're a small economy, you're open, and prices come and hit your economic growth and your inflation very, very hard. But then in the last few years, it's just sort of become more and more evident that Ukraine is a small open economy, but there are now two parts to it. There is sort of a legacy economy, and there is this new IT economy, and they coexist, but they're very, very different. So the legacy economy is still this factor production economy that's really still, your traditional sort of crisis-prone, large volatility, economic cycles, and it's still very, very large and very, very important and employs tons of people. But there is this new IT economy, digital. It's fully global. People who work in it are fully integrated into the global community. It works on a very different sort of set of values, and it exists and it grows. It's been growing through the crisis. It's been growing through, all this, period of corruption, different governments. It's been growing, and the interesting part is where does it come from, and why is it there, and where does the depth come from? So we started digging a little bit into it, and it turns out, to my surprise, maybe not to the surprise of people who've been in this space for a while, that there is a sort of multi-generational pool of talent in Ukraine. So Ukraine, as sort of an IT powerhouse, if you will, is not coming out of nowhere. They're like parents and grandparents of people who were building, computers, hardware. Then they were building local area network prototypes. They were deploying it. And what's also interesting, if you talk to the CEOs of large Ukrainian software companies, it sounds like their parents and grandparents were in this industry, and so this knowledge was passing on through families rather than through educational, systems. So there's a lot to it, and it certainly tells a very different story of Ukraine, and that's the story of Ukraine that would like to tell. The story of Ukraine that's not the story of war, corruption, and Chernobyl, but the story of Ukraine that's a story of multi-generational pool of talent that's really building the new digital world. And with that, I'd like to invite Pani Tetyana to the podium Pani Tetyana is an assistant professor at the Kiev School of Economics, and she's also part of a platform called VoxUkraine, where she works on index of monetary reforms. She's an applied mathematician by training and an economist. And she and I have been working on issues related to the Ukrainian economy and other issues for a period of time. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
So thank you very much. And I now would like to tell you about the IT industry in Ukraine and why this industry, in fact, is really important. Why this success story is very important for Ukraine. Because it showed people, young people, that they can convert their knowledge and education into competitive advantages. So this is, in fact, for the first time when many people who are well trained, who are studied in some engineering, math, or physics specialties, got the ability to build their career in some technological areas. The legacy economy in Ukraine, which was inherited from the Soviet past, failed to enjoy the high quality of human capital in Ukraine. So just here gave some numbers that show the inconsistency between the human capital quality and the economy prosperity. The country has 100% literacy rate. And also, for example, World Economic Forum ranked Ukrainian physics and math and science education number 27 out of 130 countries. And at the same time, the GDP per capita in Ukraine is extremely low. It is less than, according to the last data, it is less than $8,000 per capita. So here I gave a photo from some scientific laboratory at the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. This institution specializes in welding technologies. And this is the working place of a PhD student. So it is supposed that people should come to this kind of environment and create innovations for the industries. So, and of course, it doesn't work this way. And we can show from here, this is a GDP, this is Ukrainian GDP. So we can show from here that this legacy economy, it lost 60% of the GDP during the first 6 years, and then it did not recover. And the problem that we had all this time, these technology people, but the legacy economy simply did not have demand for these technology people. And at the same time, these technology people did not know how to work in the global environment. So they simply didn't understand how these global markets work, and they didn't know how to propose this value which can be sold on the global markets. So they needed some quite long time to study how to do this. And here also the chart where I showed the results for the legacy economy which we had because this economy didn't need technology people and just was based on cheap resources and some rent-seeking techniques. The share of the high technology industries in manufacturing value added was almost all the time less than 7%. And the contribution of low and medium low technology industries was more than 75%. Here I showed the dynamics of Ukrainian economy and of the IT industry during the last crisis. So this crisis, in fact, showed that this economy is already, this new economy which emerged around the IT industries is already getting stronger and stronger. You can see that Ukraine lost 15% of its GDP during after the war started, but the IT industry grew every year by two-digit numbers. we just believe that this difference between the legacy and this new economy, which is growing around the IT industries, is rising from different values. So while the legacy economy is predominantly based on cheap resources and rent seeking, this new economy is based on the integrated into the global environment human capital. The human capital which is globally competitive. We have interviewed a number of chief executive officers from Ukrainian IT companies. And here is a word cloud of their interview transcript. You can see here that the most frequently used words by them were people and education. So again, it is for the first time for Ukraine when all the heads of big companies say that the most competitive advantage of their business is people. We could recognize from this interview that the high education in Ukraine, while there is space to improve it, of course, but the high education provides more or less enough background to build upon this capacity for the industry. And also there is a very interesting story now with the people from the other industries. So since the IT industry is growing fast and it provides better compensation than in the other sectors, people continuously starting to get a job in the IT sector. So and in turn, this motivated and stimulated the growth in IT education industry. There is just a number that last year, the education centers, not the university education, only the education centers, provided courses for 44,000 people in different IT or programming or computer courses. Also, when we interviewed the chief executive officers, they said that, that this success story could not happen if Ukraine didn't have this long history in the scientific community. So Andrei have told already about this story, so I just wanted to remind what he said. We wanted to check how many people now involved in the industry. We wanted to understand how many people came to the industry from the families with these IT traditions. So we just, during the interviews, we just heard from the CEOs that many people were growing in the families from in the families of the IT professionals or mathematicians. And also, for example, many people who are now 35 or older had their first computer experience in the R&D centers where their parents worked. So we asked the people from the industry. We provided the survey in Kiev and Lviv IT clusters. So we asked the people from the industry if they grew in the families where one of two parents were from the IT sector, or if they were mathematicians or engineers. So among the people who came to the industry before 2006, the number of people from these IT families with IT tradition was about 60%. And then after the industry started to be more popular, it started to attract more and more people from the other spheres and from the families without this IT tradition. So you can see that now, among the people who are coming to the industry, more than 60% are like newcomers. So these are people who were grown in the families which are not connected in some way with IT or engineering or mathematician spheres. The industry is highly competitive. So we put here the graph, here on the graph how the labor market is distributed between the companies. this is a top 15 companies, and their share on the market is less than 30%. And the biggest companies have the share which is less than 3% on the market. So the market is not monopolized. Nobody dominates on them on this market. And again, it is very different from the legacy economy. Here is the graph with the countries from the Eastern Europe, and of course, Ukraine competes with these countries on the global markets for the customers. So you can see here that the number of people who are now employed in the industry in Ukraine is about a little bit more than 150,000. And also you can see that Ukraine is the second in this list. Also, it is very important that Ukrainian labor market is very flexible. So Ukraine have a simplified taxation regime, which gives more flexibility for the IT companies, and at the same time, and they can employ people as contractors, as like a kind of private entrepreneurships. And in Ukraine, the share of these people in all the IT workforce is more than 70%. So the second in this list is Poland, which has only 34% share of these private entrepreneurs. And the other countries have even less. The export of Ukrainian IT services is doubled during the last 5 years. It was 2 billion in 2016. It was 2.5 billion in 2017. There are also some other numbers which are a little bit bigger than this one, but I just was conservative and decided to use official data to provide correct comparisons across countries and across industries. The export is diversified. So in 2013, we had Russia as the second most partner of the IT industry. During these 4 years, the share of Russia became significantly smaller, and the volume also became 2 times less. And this reduction, in fact, was more than balanced by the export to the other destinations. What is also very important for this industry development is that the investment needs for this industry is significantly less than for the legacy economy. I put it here the numbers of the investment rate. So this is value added divided by the investment. And you can see that, for example, for manufacturing, the investment rate is 6 times less than for IT in Ukraine. The lack of investment has always been a problem for small and medium business and to start business in the legacy economy. And here in this industry, people sometimes need only a computer and a space in some co-working environment to start some small business. And this is like a good point for this industry. So what is the next step? It is very important that the IT companies provide services for various sectors. So they work with finance, utility sector, with retail, with healthcare, with communications, with media. So it means that in Ukraine, we now have not only the IT people who are globally integrated, but also we have people who know the business practices in these sectors where their customers work. So we have people who understand the business practices in global finance, in healthcare, in media, and so on. And in future, when like these sectors will get opportunity to grow, these people from the IT community and from the IT companies, of course, will be able to support this growth. Thank you.
So you had a fantastic presentation, and I welcome you all here, and welcome everyone who is on following us online. Usually when we talk about Ukraine, we talk about war and unfulfilled potentials and sad stories, but today we have an uplifting story, and that's fantastic to be part of. As our excellent analyst told us already, IT industry is the brightest spot in Ukraine's development, despite the war and all this unfavorable investment climate and weak institutions. Ukraine IT industry has been experiencing double-digit growth, as it was already presented. So I would one more time introduce very quickly all our panelists today. So Andriy Kirilenko, he is Director of Center of Global Finance and Technology, Imperial College London. Then Tetyana Tyshchuk, one more time, Project Leader, Index for Monitoring Reforms, and VoxUkraine. We have two excellent practitioners in the industry, Volodymyr Lavrenchuk, and he's the chairman of the board, Raiffeisenbank. And we have Oleksiy Skripnik. He is a member of Ukrainian parliament and former co-founder and CEO of Alex company, and he has he's a legacy in IT industry, has a lot to share with us. And we have Bozhena Sheremeta. She's a managing editor, Genesis Tech. Thank you, everyone. So I would, again, start with you probably a little bit to give us a little bit more overview. You wrote the excellent paper. You gave us bright picture of Ukrainian IT industry. So give us a base for one more time, base for those successes in Ukraine IT industry.
Right. Thanks a lot. So my area of study is fintech, how finance and technology come together, and digital transformation, and looking at things digital and how it's changed things. And all of you have in front of you small personal computers that you hold in your hands and you're currently using instead of listening to me. But these computers are really amazing because smartphones is a misnomer. It's much more than a phone, right? It can do lots and lots of things. It has lots and lots of power, and a lot of your life has become digital. You interact digitally. You reference certain things digitally. You record things digitally, and you can see. I don't need to sort of tell you that that's where the future is. You're possibly shopping on Amazon. You order your book, your tickets online. You pay or check your bills online or on your mobile phone. So that's where the future is, right? So this future, to an economist, is interesting because in economics we really need to understand sort of what is a digital good. What is the value of knowledge? What is the economy of knowledge? We know that knowledge-based companies have very large market valuations, but it's kind of hard to pin down what they exactly do. We know that people who are involved in the knowledge, creation of knowledge, have very high personal valuations. But again, it's economically we need to figure out where do these valuations come from. We know that in Ukraine, IT industry is developing, it's attracting a lot of people, the barriers of entry are very low, it's globally competitive, and it's very different in the way it's organized and structured than, and very positively different, the way it's organized and structured compared to sort of large industrial enterprises that came from the sort of industrialization of the Soviet Union and beyond. It consists of many, many independent thinkers who make their own personal, rational decisions to specialize in a particular way in the labor force, to educate themselves, to convert it into value, to think for themselves, to figure out what's important to them. So these are all very positive. How do we think of it as on a global scale? So Ukraine is ideally should not be viewed as something on its own. There is no word Ukraine in, for example, articles of agreement of the International Monetary Fund. Ukraine is part of a global ecosystem. It's a small open economy, and a lot of what happens in Ukraine lives by the very common economic rules. And these rules regarding digital economy and the creation of knowledge are such that you need to have organizational structures, you need to have creation of value and conversion of value that's very different, but very conducive to particular sort of strands of human society. IT industry is also very, very democratic, sometimes overly liberal. People sometimes go way, way, way in the liberal direction, especially in the areas like cryptocurrencies, crypto assets that started with sort of cyberpunks in there. But that's not bad. That's better than working on things where you have the working in large industrial enterprises and you work for whatever, just handouts that you're given to you. So I feel that this industry is transformational potentially for the labor market. It's transformational potentially for the capital markets. Potentially transformational for the integration of Ukraine into the global community at the very personal level, not at the level of a government. You don't really need. The IT industry in Ukraine exists practically despite sort of government policies, right? So there is no sort of government telling people what to do. Yes, there's a preferential taxation regime and a preferential regime to organize it, but that's about it. You create these conditions, and then it starts growing and starts attracting people and becomes really cool. It's transformational potentially for how society will develop for people who stay in this industry, and we had conversations with them. And one of the questions that comes up: why are you in Ukraine? Why don't you leave and go somewhere? They're like, we don't want to. We're globally integrated. We're fine here. Our parents are here. Our grandparents are here. We work here. We feel connected. We travel whenever we need to. But this is our place. That's where we need to be. And that's the answer that you want to hear, right? So they invest. They're globally connected, but they invest into creating their own workplace and their own country and to be a better place. So that's just sort of how sort of much broader issues. It's not just sort of IT. IT is a sort of transformational evidence of some deeper transformation happening. Whereas Tetyana said, for the first time, practically in this industry, on a large enough scale, young people could convert education into value. So you don't need to any longer convert some education into value by going to a factory and working for a monopolist, or going to work for the government, or going to work somewhere where, yes, there is conversion into value, but you're supporting legacy. And this is sort of the positive story.
I hear that a lot, not only from Ukrainians who work in IT industry, from some Americans who actually moved to Ukraine because of the IT industry, and saying that it's much better quality of life and cheap labor and cheap life, and it's effective to work there. But we have talking about the government and talking about the legacy. I would like to turn to Mr. Skripnik. He came from IT industry. He have seen the trend coming. And your parents worked in IT industry. You created very successful company. Now you are in the part of the legislation, creating legislation for the country. How did you see the trend coming, and what are the potential for the IT right now?
Thank you, Miroslava. It's very nice to be here, and it was really interesting report. It's brought me one thought that which I never thought from this point of view. That's my family. It's already 3 generations of IT people. My father started developing code in 1973, and he's still in his 80s writing code, coming to early at the 5 a.m. to the work. I stopped writing code in 2002, but my sons are continue, and I suppose the grandsons will do the same. So from this point of view, I'm
That's
absolutely
exactly what she was saying, right?
fitted.
You're successful.
Yeah, and we started a company with my father, a small scientific boutique. Later in 1998, when there was the first crisis, which absolutely killed all industry, IT industry inside of the country, and forced us to move abroad for outsourcing. So I think that this was the period for creation for biggest amount of the companies, and when the people moved for presenting services. And now we see another trend. IT as a service, we're understanding that it's becoming more red market from the viewpoint of absence of talented, because it's really, we greatly need people. The only one limitation for us, it's people, especially with business education. This is our main limitation for the development. But from the other side, the IT forced to start a lot of startups industry, started a lot of product companies. So the IT industry greatly changing now in Ukraine. So it's not only the tendency that we're presenting more and more services. The size of investment to the IT, mostly IT companies in Ukraine, for the last 2 years doubled. So it's now, for the last year, as far as I remember, near $300 million. So it's a good value for the country for which 5 years ago it was zero. So in my opinion, that we see now in a time of change of the whole picture, when IT become mature and changing. It's also necessary to mention the very important fact in IT Ukraine clusters, which became the most advanced things in Ukraine. For example, Lviv IT cluster, it's now dealing with the creation of the IT city. We building houses for IT guys with a special project, architecture project, which we supported. I think it's the best. We're creating a lot of educational programs, special education programs of a level of Berkeley in Ukrainian Catholic University. So we're changing greatly, and this is the only small facts, the demand. So we are demanding now. So clusters becoming as a major factor of the development of the city, as being one, and it's very easy to communicate with the government, at least with the local government, because from the viewpoint of global government, the only things which we need is changing in the educational system. We need deeper, more, better educational system, point. And understanding what will be the taxation. So this is 2 factors which we need from the viewpoint of the development of IT. Plus, to the development of products, I need to mention that 4 years ago when the war started, the IT was also the force, first of all, for volunteers. A great amount of volunteers, I think approximately maybe 20-30% of volunteers were from IT, plus it's forced to development of the new military industry, of high-tech military companies for providing, starting from services and ending with the drones, with the special equipment, etc. So we are now I suppose that in a few years you will see here the maybe Atlantic Council will organize the good meeting for the industry which was built from the zero, from scratch, private military industry. And our great demands for the government is to create something like DARPA here in the United States for the development of real good military companies. So this is the trends which I see now.
You mentioned Lviv as a center for IT industry. What other cities are in the trend?
So from the list of the top, of course, Kiev, then Kharkov. I mean, by the amount of the people who work in IT, then Lviv. Then it's interesting paradox or interesting phenomena of Odessa, which is more product-oriented than service-oriented, and there is a lot of good companies which already received a huge investment especially from United States funds. Then after Odessa, Dnipro, and then all others. So the size of the industry for the last year is growing at least for 20%. Plus, I think that the figures which were shown, it was more. It was not optimistic because it's conservative. It's really hard to take in consideration a huge amount of people who are working especially from the small cities and even villages as a private entrepreneurs directly to the US and the UK and European markets, which is really very hard to calculate. They're trying to hide. They are still afraid. And so on. So will be time to raise it up to the sun to show them that it's not danger to work officially. That's possible. So my estimation that for the last year, the optimistic export from Ukraine was near $4 billion. So I think it's just like closer to the values which realistically, which we will compare.
What is the percentage of GDP?
It's 4%, and it's third industry as far as I know in the list of industries. So this is what we see from the viewpoint of the development, and it's once again want to mention clusters as organization, as cooperation with the education system, and changing the whole infrastructure in a lot of cities.
Thank you so much, and I would like to next to ask a question to another practitioner, excellent businessman and banker, Mr. Lavrenchuk. You are a guru of Ukrainian banking sector. How these two industries, IT and banking, are working together, and what are the biggest challenges today you see?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. And I was thinking on what I should comment based on previous speeches. I'd like to be a bit different and to debate a bit, if you accept this. Mostly driven by statement that IT industry stays versus legacy economy. I'm a banker. I'm from legacy mostly. I guess everybody will accept this, that bankers are from the legacy. Secondly, I'm the only one person with a computer at the stage, so it gives me.
Excuse me.
I was seen the only one. It's different because I have the biggest one. Right? Okay, by size is important. It's a size of guru. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. So to prove what I was saying, I fixed 4 items. IT. Means I should respect IT clearly. And why? Banks, a bit about this, agri, and government. Starting with IT, nice presentation. And I would say everybody looks for much bigger contribution of IT to Ukrainian economy, because 20 or 25%, that's clearly not enough, taking into account that the basis statistics is very small. So growth of 20%, I would say, is not acceptable. Let's see, it should be much, much more, and will be much, much more.
If you can.
I don't. No. You will tell afterwards, because I will speak only positive about IT, right? So that's my expectation. It's not counted well yet, and the contribution will grow very fast. So what happens in Ukraine with IT people or IT industry? We call it differently. So that's a obvious incredible growth, positive emotions, not only young, but mostly young generation of people who surprisingly can communicate to each other, can cooperate to each other, and can be successful in the environment they are. And the environment is not friendly, not because of regulators, but because of crisis, financial crisis, political, many other things, right? Banks are challenged. Your question about challengers, and obviously banks were challenged, especially the last few years, by IT companies. They call themselves fintechs. Growing number of fintechs, more than 60 of fintech companies are established in Ukraine. They are seen, they speak to public, they challenge banks, and they do many. Majority of their activities is focused for payments and lending money. So why I would like to comment this global trend, this not only Ukrainian trend, but for banks is an issue what to do with that and how we can be adequate to customer expectations. So what we now focus, and our biggest challenge is not fintechs, is not IT, is the customer expectations. Customers are different now, 64% plus of Ukrainian adult population, they have internet and they have skills how to use this internet. I gave a call in my preparations to this panel discussion. So 48% of tickets for railway are being sold today by internet. More than 50% of tickets to cinema are being sold by internet. And now 30% of agribusiness is based on digital technology. So key companies whom I communicated with, they say they use many of technological words, seeds, GPS driving of tractors, and many others, that they use this precise farming on fields. Up to 30% of technology is based on digital. That's not about IT industry, that's about farmers. And these farmers not only taking this technology, they open markets in Latin America, in North Africa, replacing the Russian export market to new one. So in 18 months, my clients and our bank is leading bank in agribusiness financing. We see how they are being changed, not only driven by IT, but with IT as well, being supported. So I have a great pleasure to share with you how business environment is being changed with a big support of IT industry, right? Banks, this is something where I'd like to focus a bit more. Starting from crisis 2007-8, we were fighting for capital. 7 years in a row. And Ukraine is not the exception, but this was a special case for us. There was there was a quite popular debate that fintechs will substitute banks in many of areas. Not only in Ukraine, globally. My personal experience is that this is partly true. What we observe in Central Europe and in Ukraine, that cooperation with fintech creates these ecosystems and satisfy customer expectations. What is necessary to do, what is my report to you, that banks will adjust their technology and adjust their activities to satisfy customer expectations. So banks are willing to play the leading role in these ecosystems, keeping the priority of cooperation and so-called open banking, or open their banking data activities for cooperation in favor of customer needs. Sounds good, not bad, right? And latest is a government. So I'm not advocate of government, but when I hear legacy against industry or IT people, government doesn't support. So when we have developed our plan in our bank, commercial bank, within 80 other commercial banks of Ukraine, clearly we depend on the infrastructure and legal environment and regulation. So, but all of us are well informed. So National Bank of Ukraine and government of Ukraine developed the 2020 strategy, where digital is a very important part of the strategy, where not only technology in banking industry, but in state registers are to be established. So for today, land cadastre or land register is based on blockchain in Ukraine, established, operates. Legal entities and entrepreneurs register is electronically operates. Electronic taxation reports all over the country. I would name up to 30% of existing registers are done already in digital. Is it enough? Clearly not. But question, are banks or commercial institutions are ready to switch in? We are not ready as well. So I would say with certain level of criticism, the developments in Ukraine have a picture. So targets are well informed, are well developed and informed. We expect in 2020 not everything will be done, but high level of probability that majority of service will be electronically. In our mind, Estonia is always, I don't know, everybody probably hears the story about Estonia, where infrastructure and e-government is established everywhere, and e-services. The only issue I know that wedding is not registered in electronically because it should somewhere involve the church, but the rest services are electronically. So Ukraine has this dream. I'm conservative on that, but many things are to be done and are being done. Thank you.
I would like our panelists to comment on that, but before I actually want to give the floor to Božena and ask her about sustainability, maybe, because we didn't talk about that. So we talk about how great the industry is, but how to make it sustainable from investment point of view.
Well, thanks to Atlantic Council for making this event, because I think that Ukrainian tech industry, it's great, it's booming, but there is not enough information about that. There is not enough talking about that internationally. And even though there are communities created in Ukraine that promote Ukrainian tech industry and its successes, there is still not enough coverage. So it's a great opportunity. And talking about Ukrainian tech industry and specifically tech products, I would like to stress on that. When I was doing a research for Kyiv Post, Ukrainian English language publication, about the biggest challenges for the Ukrainian tech, early stage tech product companies, that the top three things that everybody named were corruption, bureaucracy, and war. And at that time it was the time when all those dreamy startups like PetCube, Ecoisme, Luxury started to sound really awesome on the international stage, because Snapchat bought Luxury, and then PetCube is now sold all over US. And so that was the time when people, young entrepreneurs, got really inspired by their example, and they saw that, okay, yes, we have huge amount of outsourcing companies in Ukraine, but we can do the tech product, and we can do awesome tech product. And that's when other early stage startups started to pop up. And so they were naming this corruption and bureaucracy and war as reasons that really stop them from doing business. But Ukrainians are really creative people, and they can find the ways to just pass through corruption and bureaucracy, and even to make themselves stand out and forget about such condition as war. And in 2017, when I was doing the research with the journalists from Brain TV, the media project that was made by Brain Baskin Foundation, that was actually aimed to promote Ukrainian tech industry within and out of the country. Most tech product founders named education as the key thing that was really, the hot thing for them, and the thing that should be fixed. First of all, because, and education on different levels, in different sectors. Education in terms of tech education, even though, yes, the report shows that we already know that we have great tech specialists and we have great math, physics school in Ukraine. Still, when you talk about taking a KPI, Kyiv Polytechnic Institute student and taking him for the first day at work in a tech company, he won't be ready. He doesn't know how to, it's not like how to code, but how to create the product, how to create the product that the company needs. So we need to work on, bettering the education in that term. And we also need to work on making business education really powerful in Ukraine. Because I am the graduate of the top university in Ukraine, Taras Shevchenko University, and I have finished the Master of Innovation and Investment. And honestly, this is not enough. I had to go through numerous courses online, offline, talk to people that gave some practical advice. And it's such a low level. It's not up to date. We are studying books that were written when Ukraine just got independent, or in early 2000. That's not what we need. We need modern education. We need more practitioners, more startup founders, huge tech product owners, company owners coming to Ukrainian universities, holding lectures and stuff. So, but that should be done that should be done not just by the universities. That should have some financial support from the governmental side. And so if we cannot fix the war at once, in one day, in 1 month, we should maybe work on improving education, because that's something we can do. We can do it right now, and we should take those little steps. So I think that when education really improves in Ukraine, we will have more people strong both in tech and in business. And these two components will help us, to make tech industry really progressive, not just, yes, we are smart, we know math, physics, code, cool, but we need more modern companies coming in.
So your answer to sustainability is education.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Alexei, we had this discussion before the panel, and you said that IT industry is not working for Ukraine. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, to make the picture more balanced, I want to say the fact which I still continue to repeat year by year, but it's still sad to say it's valid, that Ukraine has the place #1 of non-usage of IT specialists inside of the country. And this is very sad, because returning to what my friend Volodymyr were talking, how IT can help, I think that if it's not a big problem to Ukraine in IT to build the same ecosystem, e-government system as in Estonia. And it can save a lot of money, billions of money. But the question is more in the heads of the government structures, that we need to create some position like digital minister or chief information officer of Ukraine. Because in a lot of cases it's a question of coordination, like for example in cybersecurity, where we have at least 3 centers which is not good coordinated for each other. In other question, it's for e-government. You mentioned a lot of projects, but my analogy which I'm using is like we're building some part of the house without basement. So we have several rooms, but no basement. We need to build some, like in Estonia, X road, to have the basement for the whole, and on the base of this main register of the people to build all other. Because what I see now from the government picture is not so bright, especially the last fault of the IT system for the National Anti-Corruption Prevention Bureau, which was the major fault, and it was impact by absence of payment from the Euro Union and so on. So we may have the same with the health information system, which will be created now just because of absence of coordination, resources, and not understanding how huge this system have to be. We saw this in the United States with Obamacare, underestimating the efforts necessary, and I think it's maybe the same in Ukraine. So if we can return back IT partly to Ukraine, the impact will be huge, because we can create, like with the Prozoro, which is a part with one of the best world examples of IT system, to make the economy of Ukraine transparent. That's why the bureaucracy is highly resisting, because partly the problems of National Bureau of Anti-Corruption Bureau was greatly resisting of the bureaucracy, who was saying, we'll never ever allow you to make this system working. So just, and only one last remark, and to Bożena, for about what is the major obstacles of what not allowed, because I have a lot of startups, a lot of success. So I can say we have the only one major obstacle, not other. All other is just like smaller. Absence of good businessmen who are able to go with the startups. This is absence of business education. This is the key and the only one problem. Because I have a lot of ideas. I have no people for managing these ideas. This is the problem which we have in Ukraine. This is, by the way where we need great help from the United States, because I think that this is where we are able to cooperate.
Andrei,
I'd like to add to that maybe a little bit. I sort of feel that yes, it is the case that the public sector is not really demanding much from the IT industry. It's not one of the just sort of big areas, unlike Russia, for example, where the sort of the government public funds are spent quite a bit on the IT industry, and actually in some way make it more insular, more corrupt, and sort of less competitive globally. I feel that in Ukraine, perhaps we need to see the cycle maybe develop slightly differently than and slightly longer than we may want it to develop, where, you know, all of a sudden you have the government and IT collaborating instead, I think, or you know, established legacy businesses and IT collaborating and really creating value together. I think what might happen is what Tetyana alluded to, is that IT is going to be employed globally to develop solutions for something that's not IT. It could be solutions for a bank. It could be solutions for an insurance company. It could be a solution for an agriculture holding. It could be a solution for a chemical industry company. And then, as people who are providing IT support are learning about the business, they start understanding how the business works. And then they say, maybe we should start a business and compete with it. You see that happening over and over. You know, you see that in the first support is provided, and then people say, well, why don't we start a business? We know how it works. We know this technology. These people are paying us to do what they cannot do. Now, we understand what they do, and they don't understand how we can get it done. So why don't we start something and challenge them? I think that could be more of a progression potentially in Ukraine, and it's very healthy because, you know, as Pan Lavrenchuk said, banking sector needs to pay attention to fintech. If they were not there, they wouldn't pay attention to it. They say, hey, you know, customers, where are they going to go? They like customer experience. Tough. You know, here's what we have to offer. And that's the same, you know, all over the world. You know, people are now accustomed to a user interface of Uber, Amazon, Google. You put some clunky app in front of them, they're like, are you serious? Fintech puts a good app in front of them, they change. Right? So I feel that sort of the IT industry is at the point, mainly based on this partly superficial study, where they are getting into things that are not IT, learning about it, and creating sort of challenging solutions out of it. Maybe that's sort of going to be the progression. Trying to marry them with the government, marry them with legacy, marry them with something else, I don't think it's going to last.
But you're talking about evolution, and it's a long process. And I think Ukraine needs something fast.
Well, it grows
fast
double
growth.
digit,
Yeah.
right? So it
Yeah.
grows, double digit every year, whereas other things are like, yeah.
Volodymyr, you wanted to
I have to
comment?
comment. I have 3 jokes, but I will not make them because it's a serious topic, IT industry and Ukraine with it. I have 2 comments regarding why it's not so fast. And everybody feels the need of acceleration of changes and implementation. I have experience to be a CEO in a bank which transformed or in transition last 10 years. And so my experience is not as brave as fintechs think about this. So it's a quite complicated issue to restructure the state or the bank from A to B. And not to protect slow pace of developments. But what is going, to my assessment, is not bad. I believe that public sector or so-called state probably will never in Ukraine be strong enough to dominate over business. That's my experience in this country. Business dominates over public institutions. The role of business associations, let me say, a European Business Association where I am a vice president, or American Chamber of Commerce, or industrial industries are very, very strong in Ukraine. And if these associations didn't convince the government to make this crossroads solution or another solution to harmonize registers, the only issue is that associations or business didn't develop its own proposition up to for today. It doesn't mean that we need years and years, but I'm a member of this community. I know this issue. When it comes to the top of agenda, there will be many tools or many ways how to convince government and parliament, and I guess we cooperate on this to make things happen. So I think there should be clear assessment that the country is growing. The knowledge of what to do and how is not finally defined. The IT security is a critical issue, not because Ukraine is in the war only, but because of the number of cyber attacks ongoing on banks all around. And we can't neglect this. Having a poor economy and not very protective values of the country on this very historical change. So coming back to what I started with and what I'd like to finalize, I believe very much that when, and it's now going, the vision and proposition will be developed, the implementation will be done very fast. And this is my comment. I believe in business community as being a part of this community as well. Thank you.
I would turn to you guys for questions, but my last question probably would be for Tetyana at this point about the investment. I mean, we talked a lot about the IT industry, but what is lacking or what has to be done to attract more investment to Ukrainian, particular IT industry? Or we have enough, or we don't need.
Money always not enough. So what I heard from the IT people is that especially medium companies need some. Of course, they have investment needs, and these very often happen when they have some customers, and these customers are not ready pay in the beginning of the project. They are ready to pay, but after some stages pass, and it is very often that for medium companies is difficult to find the funding.
They need capital.
To launch these projects. So what has to be done? Again, IT people says that probably the banks has to develop some special programs for them because again, this is the point of these companies, that they don't have enough assets just for mortgages, and they don't have many of the fixed capital, and that's why there was a point that probably some special programs has to be developed.
Are Ukrainian banks ready to create special product?
We are ready to create, but not to implement. So it's a difference between creation and implementation. I'd like to be fair with that. So risky investments is for venture capital. So we speak about bankers as a usual solution for any needs of money. And banks use deposits to locate in manageable risk areas and activities. So creativity of the industry, and we know the statistics, how many fail on the way. So that's not exactly the good topic of regular or standard lending. Another issue is education, to invest in education. That's exactly what comes to our agenda. But
just sorry to interrupt you, Tetyana, we're talking about more sustainable business like services, which is absolutely not risky as far as I understand. That's why, and the problem is for the middle companies, which is really existing, is the absence, the absence of banks' money, not allow them to grow up in the maximum speed.
Look, I'd like to a bit to debate, right? So clearly, I look forward after the meeting. We sit together with your good respected institution, and I know for many years 3 generations of IT people, and there are no 3 generations of bankers, right? It means clearly I will follow customer expectations. What is my comment on that? Look, IT, as you mentioned during your introduction, it's a creative business. It's making all the time new and new and new. That's not a regular industry to be financed on the working capital financing or something. Means we look forward. We look for daily business, which is very important to be implemented on the quality which IT industry require. And their demands are very high in terms of how to deliver this daily business. And after daily business, I believe there will be first products appear to finance. So, money comes to known customers. Money don't come immediately, or finance don't come immediately to unknown customers. That's the basic rule of banking. KYC is the issue, but not only because of the legal, but because of we should know the business. And if 60% of IT companies, fintechs are established within 3 years only, right? So mostly we know that their business is not very clear defined. That's a regular answer, but selectively we are willing to serve.
I'm opening it to discussion. Introduce yourself, please.
Andrei Pazyuk, Fulbright Fellow, American University, Washington College of Law. So before asking you this question, I just want to share experience. 2 weeks ago, I visited Houston Community College cybersecurity program, and I know that Morgan Chase finance some entrepreneurship, professional internship programs as part of this big project on cybersecurity. So from your point of view, who could be driver of such projects in Ukraine if banking institutions are ready to be a part of educational process, a workforce development process, and who would be driver of reforms in educational system in Ukraine if we know the situation that everybody wants to improve the system, but who will be the driver from your point of view? Thank you.
It's a question to me? Okay. I'd like to think about it. If I clearly understood the question, whom to address the issue, who take ownership for the developments in terms of organizing or financing, all that. Clearly the main beneficiaries are in interest to make these things happen. And banks are defined as one of the key institutions, and banks look for that. Example, I will present not very selective one. There are many of such examples that group of banks or banking groups develop so-called innovative gardens. So Raiffeisen Bank in Austria developed innovative garden, sent invitations for a number of companies, a number of initiatives to be financed. And there are a number of applications, hundreds, and there are 10 or 20 selectively financed. There's a high risk, but banks want to be seen as a partner for long-term developments with this industry, and cyber security or IT security is on the top or within the priorities. So take a look on these innovative gardens. Many banks are doing this, and our group is doing this. This is the first which came to my mind. Next, give me more time, I will think about. Alexei, please.
If I can answer about education system, as a member of Committee of Science and Education in the Parliament, I can say that for IT is definitely have to be driven both by the IT sector, but especially by the clusters from one side, and by the government from the another side. Because I see, we have a lot of private initiative, which is absolutely amazing, and especially in Kiev, in big cities, which is trying to build a new way of quick education, yes, for 3-6 months, etc. But we're still most popular to the presence of people who received fundamental education, especially in mathematics and physics, and this giving us bigger advantages on the market when we are understanding the complexity problems we can resolve those projects, which is named Mission Impossible. So from this point of view, we have to have the balance. So that's why I think that the way like we have in Lviv, for example, we have Ukrainian Catholic University with a good, just created IT department for a few years. And in parallel, we have the government institution, government universities, see the as a concurrent in UKU. They try to use the advantage in long-term history and to create new initiatives, new specialities, etc., etc. So I think this will be a good combination in education from both sides. Plus, we have a lot of initiatives, especially to improve the education in the schools, because we think that it's necessary to be improved and it's not correspond to the reality of the current world. So I think from this point of view, it's have to be initiatives from all sides.
Andrei, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit on. So my fintech center is 100% financed by financial services institutions. So it's financed by the sort of large consortium of large institutions, and it's on purpose. I do not take public funds. I think public funds should be spent on healthcare, should be spent on cancer development, on things that really, for the financial services industry, really research should be financed by institutions. The question that we wanted to solve, and I'm not alone, so people who just sort of run these things, that we're trying to figure out is that the education, sort of digital education, and education for sort of emergent digital industries and companies need to be different than the traditional education that we have, and connecting the two is very hard. So traditional education in front of a blackboard or whiteboard, people, teachers write down formulas, whatever. At the end of it, the premise is that you're going to be taught, and then you're going to go out there and consume a job. Like you're going to be taught, and you're going to go out there and consume a job of a lawyer in a law firm. And the idea is that this job of a lawyer in a law firm is going to exist. Now, the idea is to change this around and say, look, we're going to educate it in a way that you're going to go out there and create a job that doesn't exist yet. That's the thing that you need to solve in Ukraine. There are no sort of jobs to consume. Those are shrinking. People are leaving the country to go find jobs elsewhere. How do we educate people so they go and create jobs? Now, converting this, even very good fundamental education, when you learn a lot of physics, and changing the mentality, which is what I think these associations funded or organizational funded or sort of clusters are supposed to do. They're supposed to figure out how to convert this, how to match the sort of very good education at the sort of done in a traditional way, which you can't just throw away. It's part of our sort of civilizational culture. Into this new mentality, how do you turn it and create jobs? It's not, I can tell you globally, it's the solutions are not obvious. We don't really know how to do it, to be fully honest. A lot of experimentation is going on, and I'd like to see a lot of experimentation in Ukraine. People are experimenting in clusters, people are experimenting in banks, people are experimenting, something's going to stick, maybe, and people will figure out and just copy it. And just say, okay, this works. Let's just all copy it, this really does. But the money is there and the talent is there, so at least you have something to start with.
I promise, Anders.
Anders Åström, the Atlantic Council. Looking upon the Ukrainian IT companies in comparison with the Russian, there's a vast difference. Russia has less of an IT sector as a share of GDP. about half as much as the Ukrainian, but they have all these very big companies. Yandex, that is easily outcompeting Google, the big social networks, Anaklasnik, Kontakte, Avito, that is Russia's Amazon. Why are these companies missing in Ukraine, or it's the Russian companies that are playing this role in Ukraine? If we take Kontakte and Anaklasniki, and why are the Ukrainian companies so small? Is it the regulatory ceiling, or is it lack of finance, or is it simply a matter of lagging slightly behind as yet?
I have a view, but you probably have an inside view. I think it's a matter of government policy. I think the government in Russia is building a full stack of companies and focusing on this because they feel that they want to develop a social networking site for Russia. They want to develop an operating systems for Russia. They want to develop systems where information passes through Russia that they can monitor. I've heard it from their experts. I heard it from people who run things like Kaspersky Lab and others, that the government tells us to do this because they feel that America dominates and hold this story. As far as I understand, in Ukraine, there is no this sort of government demand. Let's build our own operating system. Let's build our own iPhone. Let's build our own Amazon. The idea is we need to be globally competitive in the global world in the best possible way, and it just develops naturally. But
maybe that's good for Ukraine.
I think it's good for Ukraine. I think it's better for Ukraine.
If I can word on this, all what you said is true answers, because Russia has bigger government sector, which approximately compared to what they are outsourcing, compared with zero. So they have much more bigger amount of financial resources, which is also important for the development. And the third major factor, I still remember, like approximately 15 years ago, the IT, Russian IT were bringing here Gorbachev and having the meeting in the Boston with the presence of 300 top CEO from different big companies as Gorbachev as a fish to the major guest to bring in. So they were understanding necessity of advertising, of the marketing, of the industry, which for Ukraine was absolutely absent. So we were unknown in Ukraine, which for a long period was good, from the viewpoint that a lot of our good people will know how to take off the ownership of the business. But now we are far away from the viewpoint of the level of investment. So, but things are changing. From what we see a lot of, even with the former Russian funds who are operating here in the United States, wanted to escape from the Russia market and to invest to the Eastern Europe, especially in Ukraine, understanding the high impact of the sanctions over Russia. So we see another tendency which I think is very positive. Plus, we see absolutely now another good attention from the government to promote the Ukrainian export, understanding that this is one of the most important things to do for, to unbalance Ukrainian economy.
Not question.
I have three quick questions, and the third one will explain who I am. But they're very quick. Okay. Where else are you speaking and appearing? Because, this is an insider group. Everybody here is in some ways engaged in Ukraine. If you go to New York City Meetup, they have 1,000 people in IT industry meeting every month. And they have so many committees that you can go to a meeting every night. And I've used it because I have a startup that I've been working on. So that's one question. The second question is, Ukraine needs energy independence. To what degree are is the IT sector helping or working with Greencubator? I don't know if you know what Greencubator is, which is a very promising, they won an award from Stanford, and they're very well thought out. But let me tell you the third thing. I actually have been developing Ukrainian talent since 1991. And we have tens of of experienced people who are working at Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, startups. In fact, the Russian government or whoever it was recruited one of our people, and he's now doing strategic planning for Yandex. And this is after the war began, right? And this was, we had an IPO. One of our groups had an IPO of $5 to $9 billion, called the Lending Club. I don't know if you're familiar with that. We have a woman who is one of the top IT computer scientists in the world, and she developed a product for IBM. I have been working, I met with President Kuchma in 1995 with Mr. Tabachnik. I didn't even know who Mr. Tabachnik was at the time. And I said, please pay attention to this. Nobody from Ukraine wants to pay attention to this talent. It's really kind of amazing.
So what is the question?
That's the question. How do we get this talent engaged? And and who will take this talent seriously? And I can provide many sad examples on that, because it's not me that counts, it's they that count.
So Green Incubator and Wait, Bojana, what do you want to say, right?
Yeah, well, what about Green Incubator? Does anybody work with them, or what is the question?
Well, I mean, Ukraine needs energy independence of Russia. If Ukraine promotes a green energy which is not carbon-based, it will generate its own independence. And if the whole region becomes carbon independent, Russia's assets and reserves will be worth a lot less, right? And it's a strategic, interface. And if you think about energy, the way you distribute energy, the way you collect it, the way you finance it is all, critically important to that premise.
If I answer, we have, as far as I know, Aslan can correct me, the highest price for the green energy, maybe one of the highest price in the world. So, which is good and which is not good. So it is a highly speculative question, but answering to your question, it's now finishing of the building of one of the biggest solar stations. So it's a lot of investment now in the wind energy. So from this point of view, Ukraine creating even bigger amount if it can allow taking in consideration the balance of money and the possibilities for investment in this energy sector. Returning back to your question about the talent pools, investors, and so on and so forth, from what I see that we have a lot of people going outside of Ukraine. And I think that this is a positive trend from the viewpoint that a lot of them will return back, because for Ukraine IT, the biggest necessity, the biggest demand is necessity of business knowledge. We have a lot of technology knowledge, project knowledge, product knowledge. What we crazily need, the people with the business knowledge of returning back, of building startups, of helping of the product communities and creation, and going to the IPO and receiving the education. And I think that this is a good field for a common cooperation, where because United States is the best place for the investment and the best place for education and investment field.
Thank you, Bojana.
I wanted to add about the talent engagement, and you talked about different meetings going on every day. There are a lot of meetings going on, not every day, but maybe 3 times a week in Kyiv. I can show you if you ever come. So,
if you want to publicize the Ukrainian IT industry, if you go to the New York City meetup, you will see people from all over the world there who have come there to work in the IT sector. And so, you can
present your products. You can, you can interact with this. Europe, well, actually, there are a lot of roadshows, and UVCA, Ukrainian Venture Capital Association, they are organizing like the whole team of 10 startups coming to CES in Las Vegas. And there is also organization called Nova Ukraine. It's organized by Nick Bilogorsky, one of the entrepreneurs, like serial entrepreneur that is very, patriotic about tech industry. And they organized also the involvement of tech startups from Ukraine at Tech Ranch in San Francisco. So, it's being done, and a lot of startups are coming to different tech events in US and Europe. So so it's not really like we don't participate
and
anywhere.
they are very successful because we are covering them and we are doing the stories based on them. I would like everyone to have a chance to ask the question, so please, panelists, shorter answer. You, Andrei, had something to say as well. Very short.
Mine is
right?
very short. I'll just move on to the next speaker. Yeah, that's
okay.
short.
I would give the floor to
Vladislav Rashkovan, IMF. I have a question maybe to Alexei, Vladimir, Andrei. What are the most free demanded or wanted professions now in IT in Ukraine? How many of these people do you need to double this stake of GDP, IT industry in GDP in Ukraine in the next years?
It's very easy to answer. The first, as I already mentioned 2 times, is the business developers. I think it's the profession number 1 which we need. The second is the product developers. So those people who are understanding how to build the product, and it's greatly also, so it's a special is absence. I think we need approximately more than at least 200 top level product developers in the country, at least now. So it's a crazy demand. And the third is the marketing. So if you see in all my 3 specialties, it's not IT specialties. This is one of the challenges of Ukrainian IT. For us, was always interesting to write the code, but not too interesting to sell it. So that's why we now need bigger amount, and we were self-educated people. That's why we need real businessmen who are understanding how to sell, how to create demand. And also, maybe if I add the fourth, what we see now, because IT industry in Ukraine became very mature. It's for a lot of people not understanding that we are now busy in a digital transformation process of very big corporation here in the United States. Most covered by NDA, we cannot talk about this, but believe me, in the underground of very big corporation with $1 billion of income in their businesses, you will find Ukrainian people who are doing now the most challenging work for them for the digital transformation, where we're not saying them, hey, we know this language or this. We are creating absolutely another way of doing businesses. Something like the good word will be orchestration of the whole IT system in a lot of big corporations. So people for orchestration is the fourth.
I'd like to maybe echo a little bit.
One second. Short comment. First, the previous speaker question, I appreciate very much the question and the comment regarding the needs of Ukraine to act more in the markets and to be seen more, but that's we have awareness of that as well. So it's in the agenda. Thank you very much. Coming back to your question, I don't know how these professionals are named. I know that we need different people in the bank, not in IT industry, but in the bank. And that's we call now adaptive organization or agile organization, where not only new structure of cooperation with IT people in-house and external, but as how people cross-functionally could cooperate. This issue is not only for Ukraine. As a member of the Raiffeisen Group, I know what things are going in Slovakia or Balkans or other countries. So bankers need to adjust or adapt their behaviors, managerial behaviors or frontline behaviors in cooperation with IT for fast implementation of latest and all the time changing development. So I know that I have much less demands to IT people or expectation than to myself and traditional bankers that are now to be adopted on a regular basis.
Yeah, my understanding is that Ukrainian IT companies in particular are incredibly flexible. So they hire people as private contractors. So if they have a new project, they could expand very quickly. They don't have a project, they contract very quickly. So they're in the period of expansion, obviously, overall as an industry. So very flexible in terms of the organizational structure, very flexible in terms of the way they add people, and move them around. Very flexible in terms of, the space is organized very differently. And I think my understanding is also, and it's anecdotal, is that Ukrainian IT globally is being viewed as sort of medium value-added IT. Mm-hmm. So it's not low value-added like India, and it's not high value-added like Silicon Valley, but it's medium value-added. And so the sort of global reputation, and again, anecdotal, is that you hire Ukrainian IT engineers not to do your website support or to do your basic IT. You hire them to solve problems mm-hmm. that don't have obvious solutions, and you pay them for that. But it's not yet at the point where you work with them because they're going to change sort of the world and create something. They do exist, and they're moving in that direction, and so the value added in this chain is being added, and this business element, sort of attaching this business element, how do you convert this reputation now into valuation and sell it around, and is I think exactly, I second what Pan Alexei says.
Yeah. Nadia.
Lydia McConnell, U.S.-Ukraine Foundation. Last week, Andy Hunter of AmCham was here, and he talked a lot about the labor shortages that many companies in Ukraine are facing. And in fact, that there are billboards now in Poland to encourage Ukrainians to come back. So my question to you is, first of all, is the rise of Poland over Ukraine attributable to maybe Ukrainians working out of Poland? And overall question, is this an issue that you see? Because for me, it seems that if Ukraine loses the image of having a good labor force, it loses a competitive edge. So is it a problem, and what can be done?
If I can answer, in IT, no. We have no shortage of the talents. I mean, in that if you compare the income and the salary ratio to what people received in the back, I think that working in IT, Ukraine is one of the best places from this point of view. So we're losing only people to such companies with whom we cannot compete, like Google, Facebook, Amazon. So this is but the amount of people which is going is not too big. We have another tendency, which was with a lot of people misunderstanding, is the tendency that a lot of Ukrainian companies, due to the presence of necessity of secure their businesses, have to open offices in Poland, in Bulgaria, and so on and so on. So, but this is tendencies. This is Ukrainian companies which moved part of their personnel to these countries, and we hear even back demand when, for example, companies from United States wanted us to open office in Poland as to secure their business and secure how we're working. So for IT, it's not valid. It's valid for all other Ukraine, but for IT, we're only moving when we need to open office. So this is absolutely, so business became absolutely mature and international. So it's not now the question where you're working, it's a question that the companies became global, offices in different countries, and we are not thinking this is as just only Ukrainian companies. We're thinking more in the terms of global companies and offices for secure in different countries.
My question is, who's paying for the billboard? It's like a complete waste of money. Who is paying for the billboards in Poland? Seriously.
Okay, Yura, please.
Yuri Sayevich, Voice of America, retired. It's obvious that people that care about the growth of a country's economy would favor those industries that are most efficient and most effective in doing that. And that, obviously, in comparison with the legacy industries, is IT. If only we look at the statistic where every dollar of investment returns 5 times as much in value as the legacy industries. And I also would like to know what is the comparison in terms of potential for job creation. But it seems that the powers that be are doing exactly the opposite. They are favoring overtly and covertly the legacy industries. An example would be subsidized gas for Mr. Akhmetov's factories. and in other ways. I'd like to know to what extent this is true and what is being done to reverse this vector in Parliament, for example, and in the civil society.
Who would be?
I'd like to start. I think it's maybe. So as we mentioned here, what's interesting about the IT industry is that there are no IT oligarchs, there are no IT-sponsored parties, there are no IT-sponsored media. It's incredibly competitive. Top companies, 3% of the market, top companies, right? So very, very massively super competitive industry. Does not lend itself easily to concentration, to absorption of power, and so forth. If you have a situation like, obviously, if you can, monopolize a particular sector and you need to control it, you're going to have a need for a political influence so that to control it, and hence you will have the issues that you've just discussed. I think it's developmental. I think it's. I don't think really. It needs to be viewed as government policies that really needs to really support some. In fact, quite the opposite. I think it's just sort of better be left as to develop on its own, because it develops into an industry which is quite amazing. The other part. I'd like to tell you about the conversation I had in the height of a financial crisis with the chief investment officer of Goldman Sachs. So I was a regulator here in the U.S. and I was tasked as part of the team to work on the redesign of the global derivatives markets. And so 2009, right, crisis or late 2008, 2009. And so the chief investment officer of Goldman Sachs comes into a U.S. regulator, we have a conversation, and I'm like, so what's your biggest problem? And what I'm expecting to hear from him, like, all the banks are in survival mode. So I'm expecting to hear, like, we just need to survive. They just changed, no more investment banks. They had to fold into bank holding companies. They had to change organizational structure, change how they're organized. They're now, trying to figure out in the survival mode. You know what this guy tells me? Google. He says, Google opened a campus next to us in downtown Manhattan, and now I cannot hire talent. It's just a matter of time before they win. Now, if talent goes into IT and not into legacy, it's just a matter of time before IT wins. It's just a matter of time, because if your best people go this way, this is going to be best, not the other way around.
That's what's happening, you think?
I greatly support what my colleague told. And just to add, when usually I'm asked the same question, or especially about our Academy of Science, which became more the company for leasing their old-fashioned offices, I'm saying that Elon Musk in his business is never talking about the leasing of the offices. It's not so for IT, gas price or oil price, it's nothing. We compete only for the talents. We compete only for the A++ people, for best of the best. And for us, it's the absence of these best people. We are now taking, to explain you, for example, in a lot of companies, IT companies in Ukraine, when you will come inside, you will now find in the management at least 50% from abroad, just because of absence of the people of necessary A level inside of Ukraine. So we're now competing only for these A-class people. This is the biggest demand for us. So that's why I'm saying that we have something like red market in the people. So for us, education, finding the talent. So we bring the talent from United States, from Ireland, from Great Britain, and it is absolutely obvious. So we're not calculated as something extraordinary. So for us, it's absolutely normal. And giving them appropriate salary for compensation working in Ukrainian company. So we are just more thinking now about global competition. And we're thinking absolutely, so IT top Ukrainian companies discussing absolutely another problems, which is when you go to the companies like EPAM, Subserve, Alex, you will see that we moved from the question of, oh, we can do the project for you. It doesn't matter, it's not working anymore. We now come in and say, hey guys, What's about digital transformation? What's about orchestration of your business? You have a big zoo of IT systems. How you will go with this? What is the main pain for you? We are able to minimize your pain. This is what we are discussing. We're even not talking about the project. We're talking about the global businesses. So we're talking about absolutely another level. And in this case, we are not thinking, I don't want to name them legacy, just because, but we are not, it's not for me legacy, but we are in absolutely another mode. This is what is, by the way, this is not understanding by our government also. They are still thinking that we are young boys in the short trousers who are just running like pioneers, and they are not treated us as an international business which wanted to go to IPO, which are thinking and open the office around the world due to the same factors. So they're still thinking about us in the terms of fear, yes, or they're going outside. They're not asking why. Just they are not understanding that for us, for example, that for us why we are going to United States for IPO, because absence of financial market. This is the key demand on the top level. If you ask what is the goal of the IT companies, because most of them, biggest companies, at the end wanted to become global players with the with IPO in United States, just because of presence of normal speculative capital.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll just sort of echo this. Bogdan Shevchik, Pana Alexei, actually I have a question for you. So this is specific to what you've done with Alex with regards to business development and marketing. I think experience has shown that basically you stopped coding in 2002. Good for you, right? The issue is that when I have not found a coder that doesn't love his code or her code. Will tell you that this is the best thing on earth, but never understands their customer. So one of the things that you've sort of struck a chord with here is the fact that you're looking for the development of business development, outreach, marketing people. What have you done or did in LX to actually address those issues? Give us a few examples and then how that's spreading throughout Ukraine. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for the good question, because as I already told, the companies in Ukraine, IT companies, greatly changing its surrounding by itself. We found the absence of good education, especially for the deep knowledge specialties like data analysis, deep learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. Its current needs, which is a technical specialty. What we created, and not only Alex, it's a lot of other companies, created their own academies where we're selecting the best of the best. Just example, on the first examination to Alex coming 600 people, passed through it 60, oral examination passing 30, graduated from the education 20. So we selecting 20 from 600. It's a typical ratio of selecting best of the best. Yes. For the marketing, for the other specialties, we're just absent people. So we cannot find them in Ukraine because there is no such people. So that's why we are taking them outside. Our marketing director, he is from the island. Thanks to God to that his wife is Ukrainian. That's why he is
almost Ukrainian.
That's a secret weapon of Ukrainian IT.
It's a secret, by the way. Yes, I didn't want to mention it, but you. So this is really sometimes a secret weapon that's giving us the possibility to bring real brilliant, top-notch people outside, especially from United States, from Great Britain, from Ireland, from Europe. As a demand and the request for this. The third, I already told about this. We, as IT cluster in Lviv, found that we need people which are able to speak with the CIO on the level at least of chief information officers. That's why we created master program in UKU with no compromise of the level. where the teachers for this program are 99% abroad. So only one teacher who is already Canadian, but who is living, thanks to his wife, in Ukraine. But all other are
We should do another report on this.
Yeah.
3 generations of Ukrainian IT.
Yes. So that's this is the way to. So we're now thinking about not only IT like a CIO, but thinking about adding necessity people for the product development and digital transformation as the most demandable people in the IT industry. Plus, what I wanted to add, if you go, I can talk about Lviv as an example, but it's the same valid to Kyiv, Dnipro, Kharkiv. We have, if you can, I can use this term of Ukrainian borscht. We have the good borscht inside of the city, of good balance, outsourcing, products, startups, small companies. Just last facts. I just read this morning the report from our cluster. We have 450 companies, IT companies in the city. From them, 12% is big, more than 400. The 50% is the middle, like 50 to 100, and enormous amount of this others are small. It's just like, and busy in absolutely different environments. So we have, like you told, asking that pictures and so on. It's very hard to find the day in Lviv where there's no IT event. Plus, just coming to our IT arena, the challenge for this year is not the price for the ticket. The price is very high for Ukraine, $300 for one participant. The challenge that we have no place for more than 3,000 people inside of Lviv to bring together, because people wanted to see, wanted to come, and we have the top speakers around the world for such conferences. So the situation changed so greatly that last conferences was so, can say, use the word brutal, that we even didn't give a possibility to the officials to say their income world. So it was absolutely IT conference, which is not good. I am not supporting this, but this is the fact. So this is how the situation changed. And I also wanted to add that due to the changing of the world, especially artificial intelligence, big data, all this greatly dependable on the mathematics methods which were developed like 40, 50 years ago, which is the basic for the foundation. So for Ukraine, it's also one of the possibilities, of the good possibilities, to be on the top in the world list for the next few years, at least to the presence of artificial intelligence, super intelligence in the world.
So I think it's a good ending words, and I would like to ask each of you as well to give us overview and maybe your future. How do you see the future for the industry in Ukraine?
Thank you very much. I think it's great that you guys stayed through much longer than a lot of time. It's been. Thank you for your questions. I think that I'm not really sure what we can say, but I think it's a great point to do greater outreach. I think it's a fantastic point. I think we do need to think about sort of more events and offer something to the community. It's not entirely clear what we can offer with this sort of analysis to the IT industry participants, and say in New York, really startups should really be going there and pitching their products and ideas. But I think what we could really offer more is maybe to the media.
And better understanding.
Yeah, maybe to the media to popularize the story. I think it's a very positive story. It's a real story. It's not a fake story. It's for real. I mean, it's really like lots and lots of people and lots of money and lots of talent, and multi-generational story. It's hard to find. I haven't looked, but it's hard to find. Make a story that Ukraine has 3 generations of bankers. You can go to Italy and they'll tell you we have 6 generations of bankers. In Ukraine, but to tell the world the story, we have 3 or 4 generations of IT talent, and now all that we need to this depth is to add really understanding of business, how to convert it into high value, good story, easy to understand story, right? So, come, visit, hear the pitches, we're changing the community. It's going to continue to happen because it's cool. I mean, there's buzz around it. It's cool, people want to do it. So I guess that's a summary.
And I think that Alexei will tell a little bit more about the future of the industry.
Alexei would not say anything anymore.
Okay. So
he has a lot of time.
Again,
you take his time.
Again, I would like to say that what is more important is not only the future of the industry, but the future of Ukrainian economy. And as I said, that it is important that the IT industry is bringing knowledge and bringing practices to Ukraine. And I think that it is the next step is penetrating of these technologies in the other industries. I hope that in several years the same explosive growth will happen in some other industries due to we have these people.
Fantastic. Bożena.
Well, I would like to say that the most important thing about Ukrainian tech industry right now is that we stopped relying on the government or some external factors. The tech industry is really helping itself, and in terms of, again, if we talk about education, the software services development companies, they are organizing massive schools, as you said, for the tech specialists, and they are really making very strong tech specialists. And about the business-oriented people, I would say that tech product companies are taking the lead here because there are bright examples of MacPo and Zio Alliance. These two companies are tech product companies. They make products for Apple's Mac operating system. And so they organize every year, they organize this tech product school, and people from different backgrounds come there. And then they employ those people. And so these specialists grow, and then they go anywhere, any other company to move on with their career. And so there is one part of the companies helping to make better tech specialists. There is another part of the companies helping to bring more business professionals. And in that regard, I think we won't decline in the progress. I think we'll be only moving forward, and I'm really sure about that. Whatever really happens in Ukraine, I mean, that's my point of view.
Thank you. I guess this time for my comments. I learned many from our discussion openly, and I appreciate very much this time. Probably not too much to share from my experience, but what I'm thinking now after these discussions. I'm thinking that Ukraine economy is opened one, not only some industries selected, but global, mostly. We're dependent of the international markets much more as small country could dependent. So we can't avoid global trends. And digitalization or IT industry is a global influencer on countries' success. So we are in, and that's good for us. Issue number two is that Ukrainian private sector is big one, so could be perceived as a big influencer to make all these things happen. And private sector, where I'm present here, so we should report our shareholders on income, on returns. And so I'm interested to make all these things happen in my bank and in the industry. So private sector plays a role. What is my experience in Ukraine that I don't criticize public sector? Sorry for this probably not expected comments, but what I know, many people from the market came to government after Revolution of Dignity. Could name Natalia Reska and many other people who did their job and who are doing now with Prozora example and many others. So there is no enemies in the public sector. So the issue of agenda is difficult. And on the top of the agenda, I think it's important to have awareness that should be done, and the task not to overestimate expectations. So we are not global player. We are a small economy. We can't compare ourselves with global players. And expectations, I think, should be realistic. And this is our task, responsibility to talk to our clients or to market. That realistically, we will be in the market, but continuously we are still small one, and we should get certain expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for staying for 2 hours. It was interesting, I guess, if you're here still. Thank you.
Thank you.